Nare, welcome to Power Talk. What's in your mind?
Hi, Ndlozi, how's it?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Hi, Kishap. Yeah, but I never heard of Ethel Fugard until that movie, too, you know. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about him, but I think I wrote an interesting place. I did read a couple of them after that. Yeah, so listen, I just want to talk about a school of thought, you know. When I'm talking about a school of thought, I'm talking about our constitution. Our constitution is built around a school of European, Eurocentric school of thought. So that's the other day there was a lady, she was talking about why can't us as Africans fix our communities and all get together. You know, there's so much bureaucracy around doing that because I know around the community where I stay when you're trying to get involved. So this is how the government have made. They have made everything, it must be done through them. You understand? When you do something, not through them, it depends as well on the management. They might reject you. That's what happened as well to the EFF when they built, I think, a bridge somewhere. So I think I cannot remember where, but we understand. So they went there and they have to demolish that bridge. But that bridge, actually, it was meant for kids so that they can cross, I understand, the river when especially it's raining. It was properly done, but because it was not done by the government. So the whole idea is the school of thought, our constitution, it should be African constitution so that us black people, we can be responsible. We can take the whole village as well to raise up a child. As it is, I think black people, we struggle with this constitution. It was never meant for us. So the constitution is just a school of thought. It doesn't mean that it's all right, but it's a school how white people think. This is not how us black people think.
Nare there from Black Gori talking about the constitution. We'll pick up that conversation. Let's take Steve Libilo. Steve Libilo, welcome to Power Talk.
Hi, Dr. Ndlozi. In actual fact, what I'm just about to talk about would be a follow-up to what Nari has just said. But mine is actually in response to an article in Politics Web that has sent tongues waving. You know, it is an article that sums up the interview between Ruth and Tucker Carlson. And in this article, the author talks about the Azanian radical tradition, you know, having infiltrated, you know, is the word, the University of Pretoria, you know, with black radicals who are calling for a revolution. And in fact, the mass murder of white people. And they mentioned the academics concerned, you know, who indeed are members of the Azanian Philosophical Society, you know, and they have actually made a mark just in terms of the paradigm that they introduced, particularly at UP in the jurisprudence department. And I thought, you know, this is a subject that we probably might want to talk about. But my reaction to that would be that, I mean, for the past 40 years, I mean, you had institutions of higher learning, you know, particularly what we used to call bush colleges, you know, such as Tapley or Port Hare and other black universities of the time, of the 1980s. You had a whole generation of Afrikaner academics, you know, who were pushing an Afrikaner kind of Christian opvoeding, as they call it, you know, and when you come to the humanities, it was a mess. I mean, and all of these things, you know, would have penetrated white institutions when black students started, you know, being admitted into these institutions. And yet the black radical tradition as a paradigm, you know, as a theoretical and intellectual paradigm for a discourse, never actually came to the fore until these three academics and a few others, you know, hit the academic scene. And that becomes the reaction. Now, I know I'm actually taking things, you know, just randomly, but I think this is a discussion that needs to be structured so that we can be able to locate.
We'll certainly pick it up, Steve. We'll certainly pick it up. The African radical tradition of Azania and what it philosophically is. Is it really different to the West? Is it different to the East? And perhaps also, what is African or non-African about our constitution? Certainly this claim has been made very passionately in different circles of our country, not to exclude as well Parliament, often mobilized to try and poke holes on our constitution. Precisely what it is, even I would be very much happy to hear about it. Let's take the headlines and we'll be back. We're still on the open lines. If you just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're still on the open lines. We're going to take the headlines with Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Mbuyiseni. Good morning. The trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning at the Western Cape High Court, sitting in the Saldanha Multi-Purpose Centre. Testifying as a fourth witness, Sergeant Maya Milstein from the Child Protection Unit told the court that after a week of questioning Jocelyn's mother, Kelly Smith, and her co-accused, he believed they were being dishonest. Smith, along with Jacqueline Apollos and Stefano van Rijn, faces charges of kidnapping and human trafficking in connection with Jocelyn's disappearance. Milstein further testified that during his interrogation, Van Rijn suggested that Jocelyn may have been sold for muti rituals. However, her investigation into the claim did not yield any evidence. The grade 1 learner went missing in February last year while under Apollos' care.
No, well, it's not in dispute that they then made certain admissions to you. Those admissions are not in dispute. You may testify about that.
My Lord,
well,
at that stage, both Ms. Smith and Mr. Apollos admitted to being drug users. They said that they used TIP. It was further established by Ms. Smith that she had an arrangement with a local man that she would...
It's not necessary. Don't go there.
And President Cyril Ramaphosa has lauded late novelist and actor Athol Fugard as an extraordinary storyteller in extraordinary times. Fugard, who's renowned for his vast body of work, including Tsotsi and No Good Friday, died on Saturday at the age of 92. Here is Ramaphosa spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
Beyond the impressive body of work that he has left behind, Athol Fugard will be remembered for being an outlier amongst the millions of white South Africans who blindly turned a blind eye to the injustice being perpetrated in their name.
More on these and other power stories at 10 o'clock.
Power traffic.
A very good morning to you. Let's check out what's happening in your roads. Starting off in Sandton, if you're traveling on Catherine Street westbound, you can expect queuing traffic. Those delays are clear just after you pass the West Street intersection. You can expect them as you're traveling towards the Sandton CBD. If you're traveling on the M1 northbound, an earlier crash before the Grayston Drive exit seems to have been cleared off the roadway, but traffic is still very slow from Atho Oaklands heading up towards the Grayston Drive exit. You can also expect delays as you are traveling on the M1 southbound approaching the Glenhove Road off-ramp. If you are in Stratham Park traveling on Malibongwe Drive eastbound, there's queuing traffic to expect approaching the Oxford Street intersection. Winnie Mandela Drive southbound experiencing delays in Bryanston as you're traveling past Sloane Street heading towards the Bryanston Drive intersection. And lastly in Craighaven, if you're traveling on Cedar Road, there's some queuing traffic to expect as you're headed towards Uranium Street. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebohang Pukela.
Power traffic.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Power Zone with Katlego Legodi. Weekdays, midnight to 3 a.m.
Katlego Ramusa, who's an author and a motivational speaker. Life does deal us a blow, one after the other. How do we navigate?
Laughter is a medicine. Sometimes just laugh at your problems. and you'll have peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see that one coming. So, you count it all joy.
Yes, sir, but if you are not connected to the supernatural, you will lose your mind in the process. There are situations that make you to call on your God, even though you don't believe that there is God, and you start to speak positive things in life when you are going through the most, because words create. What you visualize and verbalize will materialize.
Power Zone on Power 98.7. Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, where your voice is heard and opinion matters.
We're taking your calls on 0861-987-000, WhatsApp line 083-303-7093. We're still on the open lines, and we've got Hamlet from Pretoria. Welcome to Power Talk.
Good morning, the good doctor. Mine this morning is just that we're expecting this budget speech by the Minister of Finance. And, when you look at, for the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about this, our country's debt is way too much. It's really putting a major strain on the fiscus, and there's no money essentially in the fiscus. And for me, government is good in putting austerity measures in place. But when it comes to, the privileges and benefits of these ministers, maybe you might shed a light there, because I believe that this ministerial handbook, it's something that the time to review it has come and gone. I think, some of those privileges must be cut to half, if not done away with completely. You can spend billions of rands annually just to ensure that ministers have cars, they've got protectors and all of that. So, and even the number of these protectors, some of these ministers have, why would you have about 4, 5, 6 protectors? You just have one individual. Could not be 2 or 3 enough, and depending, depending with your position, and now we are likely to foot the bill for this percent VAT, and that's pushing inflation up. We know that as it is, the cost of living in South Africa, it's too high, and you've got to state that they took about 900 trillion rands. They don't know where is that money. The money is not in Kokwescom, Canada is then got transmitted, and now because of corruption, we are forced now to pay that 2% additional VAT. And they get everything for free. We have to pay, a very heavy price for some of the basic needs.
Thank you.
It's as if you've got the politicians that are so detached from the basic living conditions of South Africans.
Thank you, Hamlet. Certainly something to think about, particularly when the cabinet is so big, the cost of South Africa's cabinet and the conversation about increasing value-added tax doesn't really relate, doesn't really translate. And that is what Hamlet is talking about there. Let's take Khomotso from Mood. Welcome to Power Talk, Sissy.
Good morning, Marcus. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
No problems. I would like you to unpack a discussion for me, maybe, when you have some time. Last week when we were talking about the U.S. and the executive orders and the tariffs, wada. And I was just finding it so funny that, the IMF and them can talk about BEE when, had we not had BEE, Dr. Mbuyiseni, we would not have some of our black people affording the American products, et cetera, that are being used. And I think my question is always, for Rona as a people, why do we struggle to make a stand? Like, how the Canadians are like, American booze out of our shops, wada. If you're going to be difficult with us, we're going to be difficult with you. But Rona, no, we spend the weekend, we're drinking our Hennessy and Jack Daniels, and like, we are angry, but we are not angry because we don't want to, do the difficult things. And then you look at something like what's happening with the churches and the target fast, and I'm still sitting there. And we've done this many times. We've seen racist things happening at restaurants, whatever, and you're angry in the moment, and you tweet and you call Power FM, but when you're supposed to take a stand, you're like, oh wow, we don't want Rupert Marin, I want my black cat peanut butter. This is what I'm going to do. And you're like, how are we trying to move forward as a people and stop throwing things at the hands of government and party politics, which at the same time we are saying are getting us nowhere,
Yeah.
So if you can unpack that maybe sometime later, I would really love to engage in that kind of conversation.
No, we'll certainly do the Khomotso. We'll do Khomotso from Mood. And then we've got Tsepo from Pretoria. Welcome to Power Talk, Tsepo.
Yeah, my brother.
Baba.
Yeah, look, my brother, I listened to the minister, ANC Minister of Finance, telling us that if he's not allowed to increase the VAT, he's going to take from us. I don't know if this minister understands that this money, this 350, is the money that is supposed to assist the people of this country. It is not luxury. It is not the blue light brigade. It is money that goes to food of the citizens of this country. And he doesn't have a problem taking it away. Can you imagine this guy? He didn't have a problem to tell the nation that if you don't give me 2%, we're going to have to take away FRD grant. My brother, these people are just, I don't know how they behave. They're not taking any fat from themselves. There's so much fat that they can take. They're not even willing to touch it. They've never touched it in the last 30 years. I mean, these guys, if you think about it, my brother, you've got more than 250 mayors and city managers and all of the other guys who are guarded by this blue light brigade. It's 3 people per municipality multiplied by 257. And then you go to the province. All of the MECs, all the premier, they're also guarded by the blue light brigade. And then you go to national. And then you go to parliament. The parliamentarians are flying between Joburg and Cape Town every day through SAA. Who's feeding that cost? When we go to Cape Town, we pay our own money. But the parliamentarians are paid for by the state to fly around every day between Cape Town and Joburg. This thing is said that the government needs to cut where there's a shortfall. They're not willing to touch that. Ministers do not want to come on TV and tell us we want to cut the fat from ourselves. I mean, why do we have more than 256 municipalities in such a small country? Yeah. I mean, US, if you look at US, all the states, they do not even get to 200 to 150. We have the poorest, but we've got 257 municipalities.
Thank you,
This is fat, my brother. These people need to cut the fat and leave us away. This 350 rands is really at least money that the people of this country can say, we now enjoy government. It's just 350.
Thank
These
you,
guys have been eating non-stop for the last 30 years.
Thank you, Tsepo. That's Tsepo there complaining about the cost of doing politics. Certainly, the support that goes into politicians vis-a-vis the VAT. Something to think about. I don't know if the numbers balance, but it does. If you are a leader, you must be concerned about the support base that the fiscus is taking to support political lives, politicians, and all of that. And you wake up and say you're going to increase VAT in an already expensive economy. If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk 98.7 with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are taking your calls on 0861987000, WhatsApp line 0833037093. We've got Moses from Bramley. Welcome to Power Talk.
Morning, Mbuyiseni. Yeah. You know, I've been listening to this talk of our mayor in Joburg and the president talking about renewing Joburg, bringing it to the glory days of African world-class city. It's just a fallacy. These people are just talking, you know. You look at Joburg, you know, Mbuyiseni, when some years back, you know, dating from apartheid, when you are coming from Soweto to Jozi, that was a pride. You want to look at your best dress. It's like you want to look at the top. But now you look at Joburg, when you go there, it's just another thing. It's another city in Africa, you know. It's like we must just fancy it and rename it. It's no longer our Joburg that we know back then. So when these guys are talking that they want to do 1, 2, 3, when they are still having the culture of stealing from us, even if the money can be budgeted for renewing Joburg, you know, these people will put their dirty hands on that money. They want. You know, we don't have caliber of leaders that are there to serve citizenry of this country. They are there to self-serving themselves, and they've proved it time and again, and we still believe in these people. No, South African, come on. We must think otherwise. Mina Futi, I'm tired. I've been advocating for that. We need to go back to our way of organizing, whereby during apartheid, when things are not happening, we used to say, for maybe for today. Matter with this government, because we cannot solve them unless we do something drastically.
Thank you, Moses.
Maybe we close the country for a week.
Thank you, Moses.
And see to it that we put people who are, we've got a lot of people, nicer people like you, who can think of developing the country. But they are no longer closer to the budget, closer to finances. All I'm showed, they are there. I'm showed, I'm a seller.
Thank you very much, Moses from Bramley, complaining there about the city renewal in Johannesburg, finding it very difficult to believe if indeed it will roll out. Let's take Neo from Midrand. Welcome to Power Talk.
Hey, Dr.
Baba.
Hey, Doc. One is a comment and another is a question. The question is for you. First one, in Europe, Romania, they barred a candidate who won the first round of election last year in November. After he won, they cancelled it. After cancelling it, they rescheduled. After they rescheduled, now they're saying he cannot run. Simply because he's opposing their views. He's anti-NATO. They cancelled it. And then EU said absolutely nothing. Then they're going to come and lecture us about democracy. Talk about hypocrisy. Number two, Doc, a tweet regarding Ramaphosa as the most pro-SA president. Ne?
As the what?
The most pro-South African president. Most pro-black people in South Africa.
Okay.
So Doc, from my perspective, this guy was part of the 10 wasted years in government. Ne? So my administration, he was there. And then his first term, every day he gave us a load shedding, which caused havoc throughout the particularly black economy. Based on what would you conclude that he's the most pro-black ANC, pro-black ANC president? From my perspective, he's killing the ANC. You know, somewhere we will say it was killed by Zuma. But even today, Zuma is not being charged with destruction of SA economy. This is amazing. This is something that I'm unable to comprehend, Doc, that Zuma is the one that destroyed South Africa. But Zuma is not being charged. But this one, the current president, is the one that gave us load shedding. Even today, we're still getting load shedding. But somehow you come to a conclusion that this person is the most pro-black ANC president. So perhaps Doc maybe might enlighten. Besides Pila, besides NHI, besides those two, based on what one conclude that this is the most pro-black president. Today, his minister is advocating for an increase in VAT all these moves are anti-black.
Thank you, Nell. Let's get in others.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will definitely do that. The open line is mostly a platform for your views, but I don't think the tweet you read it properly. It was not about which president is more pro-black than the other, but I certainly will review it and restate it in a way that assists a perspective and to understand on the foreign platform what Ramaphosa has been doing. Let's take Phukuletso from Skukuni. Welcome to Power Talk.
Mbuyiseni ngwana khosile kae?
Re tswile le kae ndati?
Ai re tswile man. We can not level with Sheva Fana ngwana khosile.
Yeah. Pipi. Yeah.
Considering gore maisa ba a shogane a lebane le batho ba ile gore timi batho ba tsana le Mohammed Salah man ke batho ba ile gore ke di international players. So o ka level papadi ya Egypt ile bafana ke ni ba pala ka di local players man. So also Sanjo for credit go PSL agolo and that the Kosa for doing exceptionally well man.
No, thank you, Phukuletso. Certainly, let's align ourselves as the show here to congratulations motion to Bafana against Egypt. They did well there. If you've just joined us, we are here on Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're taking your calls on 086198700, WhatsApp line 0833037093. Trish from Montana, welcome to Power Talk.
Hello, Dr. Comrade, baby of the country, the one that we love most. You know we love you, Doc. You know you love.
Thank you.
You are so loved. And last week I was so emotional when you said, you know, I'm shaking, I'm panicking, and I said, that's a real man. You know, even if you can be an intellectual. There are spaces then when you arrive, you need to humble yourself. So that's why you were panicking. And look at you now today. That fear is gone. You are the best, Doctor. You are the best.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you very much.
And God will always be with you.
Thank you.
He guides our steps. He guides our steps and He knows our destiny.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I want to talk is 2%. Doc, really we are broken. This thing of right now we need to support the politician. It's really not okay, and it's unconstitutional. Some of us, we are single parents. Even if we can say, okay, fine, let's give them that 2%. You know, politicians, there's no integrity. The money is not going to be used for the things that was supposed to be used. So really, we as single parents, we're struggling to take our kids with our money to best schools. But why must we support men? Like men. I'm done, Doc.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you. Now.
Thank you very much. Really, this idea it's a strong one, and we are discussing the budget on Wednesday, and we're going to certainly elevate these questions with the officials and some of the experts. Why keep giving more money when we do not see exactly its use? The infrastructure is deteriorating across the board, and the Minister of Finance comes in and says he wants to increase the VAT. You want to increase our troubles on an already troubled government service. So I think it's a valid concern, certainly dominant this morning on the open lines. If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're taking your call 086198700. Let's take KK from Deep Kloof. Welcome to Power Talk.
Baba Mbuyiseni.
Bab.
Abanye bathi Mgqosheni, abanye bathi Mbuyiseni. Internet nawe uyayibona le ndaba.
Abobana bathi Mgqosheni.
EFF. Okay, not Mbuyiseni. So you are bet your real name, Mbuyiseni.
Okay. Wena uthini?
abanye bathi ngithandeni nami ngithi ngithandeni. I'm very happy about you, Doc. And I appreciate your style that you awubeki a character yakho phambili. I still remember Paulo Jordan. Whenever he was called on the radio, he insisted that it be called Dr. Paulo Jordan. But when you are Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, you don't call yourself Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. That is what we call modesty.
Thank you, KK. What is in your head this morning?
Okay, my take this morning is that we have to audit this SRD grant. Remember, it was introduced during the pandemic era.
Yes.
And in that time, even illegal foreigners were receiving that money. And when it was taken forward, nobody cut off the illegal foreigners or all those who were not eligible to get the grant. Hence, the bill rises up to 40 billion. So, in order to cut a little bit of fat from this SRC, let us everybody who receives the reapply. And the third part of it is that even kids who are 18 years, who are at school, kids of teachers, kids of even government servants are receiving this grant.
Thank you, KK.
Thank you, sir.
Let's review the SRD grant. It may be funding more than what it's supposed to. Nokwazi from Walkerville, welcome to Power Talks. See?
Yes, hi. Good morning, Dr. Ndlozi.
Good morning, Nokwazi.
Good morning. Yo, my heart is heavy. My heart is heavy because we are walking around here as if all is well. But the reality, Dr. Ndlozi, is that all is not well. The majority of South Africans are living a life they never imagined when they voted in 1994.
Yes.
That there would be, what breaks my heart, Dr. Ndlozi, is when I see people coming to my dustbin and trying to find food out of my dustbin. And then we call ourselves these Africans who are proud. We call ourselves this leading nation on the African continent. How? When the least of us is trying to eke out a living in a country that says you are not good enough or we are not able to accommodate you. Yet you can be illegal in this country and live a better life than the citizens of this country. The very citizens who went through apartheid and discrimination. And so where I stand, Dr. Ndlozi, is here. South Africans at some point are going to revolt. And they're going to take up arms because the life that they have been promised was nothing, but it was futility. There was nothing tangible that they were given. And as such, they will revolt. It will never be business as usual because 20 years later, we will not recognize our own nation.
Nokwazi from Walkerville, very strong views there. If things don't improve, we might have internal instability that we see in other countries occurring here on our own land. Very powerful comments there. Caution deep from her soul that is troubled. Thank you very much, Nokwazi from Walkerville. Let's take Lutik from Pretoria. Did I say that name correctly?
Oh, yes, you did.
Yeah, welcome to Power Talk.
Legendo.
Ritswile le guy.
Oh, no, man. First time on radio, so it's a great privilege to be here. Yeah.
I've got 1 to 2 minutes with you before we take the news. So welcome to Power Talk and hit it.
All right. So I just want to touch on the budget, specifically with the VAT increase. There's actually no reason for the government to be increasing the VAT. There are many areas that can be looked at, and I'm not sure why they are not being looked at. So, for example, we need to strengthen the revenue collection mechanism. 2 weeks ago, I went to SARS, and it's just painful to pay them, and it should be so easy to pay SARS. So they need to have the best systems in the world, because that's where you start. You don't start by say, let's cut expenses. You look at the revenue mechanism and say, how can we improve those? And the other thing, the other area one can look at is the state-owned entities. We have over 1,500 state-owned entities that are running our lives. And some of those can easily be matched so that you can shave off the executive level, you know? Not necessarily cutting down the staff because you don't want to create more problems, but the executive level, you can certainly shave off there. And the other thing is that government needs to heavily invest in entrepreneurs. I myself being an entrepreneur, you know, we don't get the proper support we should be getting from government. And I mean, when you look at entrepreneurs, I mean, anyone who goes into entrepreneurship should just have a tremendous amount of support from the government because those are the people that are going to grow the economy.
And create jobs.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lutik, there from Pretoria about entrepreneurship and job creation. It's top of the hour, 10:00 hours. We are going to take the news with Nyakalo Tefu. Stay tuned.
Power News.
Thanks, Mbuyiseni. The top stories at this hour. The trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning, and it's all systems go for the Umkhonto weSizwe Party's march in the Pretoria CBD this morning. With the news at 10, a very good morning to you. I'm Nyakalo Tefu. The trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning at the Western Cape High Court sitting at the Saldanha Multi-Purpose Centre. Testifying as the fourth witness, Sergeant Meyer Malstein from the Child Protection Unit told the court that after a week of questioning Jocelyn's mother, Kelly Smith, and her co-accused, he believed they were being dishonest. Smith, along with Jacqueline Polis and Stefano van Rijn, faces charges of kidnapping and human trafficking in connection with Jocelyn's disappearance. Malstein further testified that during his interrogation, van Rijn suggested that Jocelyn may have been sold for muti rituals. However, his investigation into this claim did not yield any evidence. The grade 1 learner went missing in February last year while under Apollo's care.
No, well, it's not in dispute that they then made certain admissions to you. Those admissions are not in dispute. You may testify about that.
My Lord,
well,
at that stage, both Ms. Smith and Mr. Apollos admitted to being drug users. They said that they used TIP. It was further established by Ms. Smith that she had an arrangement with a local man that she would...
It's not necessary, don't go there.
It's all systems go for Umkhonto weSizwe Party's march in the Pretoria CBD this morning. Members of the party, joined by its Military Veterans League, are currently gathering at Church Square, gearing up for the march to the National Treasury and Reserve Bank. The march is against the 2% VAT increase and the pending liquidation of Itala Bank. 257,000 depositors at Itala have not been able to withdraw or deposit funds after the repayment administrator instructed the entity to stop all withdrawals and deposits. The instruction followed an application by the Prudential Authority of the South African Reserve Bank to provisionally liquidate Itala over claims of legal and technical insolvency. Speaking to Power News ahead of the march, MKP Tshwane regional organizer Mpho Morolane had this to say.
It cannot be that a bank that has assisted African business people, farmers, it's being liquidated like that. I mean, and we're saying that no to a liquidation of Itala. The second issue is the march against the increase on VAT. And it cannot be that the powers that be just takes a decision in saying that there is an increment on VAT. Remember, this VAT is as a result of the shortfall in our fiscus of 60 billion rand.
In other news, KwaZulu-Natal has been declared a state of disaster following the devastating impact of recent extreme weather conditions. The declaration made by the National Disaster Management Centre enables the mobilization of all state organs to support affected communities and implement contingency measures. Last month, the province has experienced heavy rainfall and severe flooding. The recent floods have claimed at least 22 lives. According to the provincial government, the widespread destruction has resulted in an estimated 3.1 billion rand in damages. Meanwhile, speaking on behalf of the Department of COGTA, Senzelwe Mzila stated that MEC Thulasizwe Buthelezi has welcomed the declaration.
This declaration, promulgated in terms of Section 23(1)(b) of the Disaster Management Act 2002, represents a critical intervention to ensure a cohesive and comprehensive response to the devastating consequences of the recent disruptive rainfall, thunderstorms, floods, and powerful winds. The MEC for COGTA has assured the people of KZN that the department will work diligently with the NDMC, municipalities, and all pertinent stakeholders to ensure the efficient coordination of response and recovery efforts.
Transport Minister Barbara Creecy is currently at the Pilomoni Hospital in the Free State to assess the recovery and rehabilitation of the 2 remaining patients who were affected in the tragic Free State crash. The crash occurred earlier this week on the N16, not far from Rugby towards Smithsfield, resulting in the deaths of 10 individuals. 20 other patients of the crash who had been admitted at different hospitals in Mangaung have since been discharged. Speaking to the media just outside the hospital, Creecy offered her condolences to the 10 families who lost their loved ones.
I want to take this opportunity to once again express my sincere condolences to the 10 families who lost loved ones in this tragic incident. According to the facts at our disposal, and you would understand that this accident is still under investigation, the PRASA bus, which was a Mercedes city-to-city bus owned by Autopax, a subsidiary of PRASA, was carrying 33 passengers when it was involved in a sideswipe with a Volvo truck.
Creecy expressed confidence in the 2 remaining patients to recover adequately.
Based on the medical reports from the medical staff, we remain hopeful that the 2 patients who are in this hospital at the moment will make a full recovery.
A look at your financial indicators. The rand is trading at 18 rand 25 cents to the US dollar, 23 rand 52 cents to the pound, 19 rand 78 cents to the euro. Gold's trading at $2,914.60 a fine ounce. Our Brent crude oil is at $70.35 a barrel. Recapping the top story in Power News at this hour, the trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning.
In power traffic, there are no major incidents reported around most parts of the province. If you are traveling on the M1 southbound, though, you can expect some delays approaching the Glenhove Road exit. In Crown City, if you are traveling on the M2 westbound, there's some slow-moving traffic to expect between the Crown interchange and the Main Reef Road intersection. If you are in Kempton Park and traveling on the R24 westbound, there's some queuing traffic from the OR Tambo International Airport. Those delays are clear before the Barbara Road off-ramp, rather. And lastly, if you're traveling towards Kempton Park on the R21 southbound, there's some heavy congestion that's starting shortly after you pass Olifantsfontein Road, clearing just after the R25 Babsfontein Road exit.
Power News. On FM, online, and DSTV channel 889. This is Power 98.7.
This is Power 98.7. And now you're listening to Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, 9 a.m. to midday, taking your calls on 0861 987 000.
Welcome back to Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're going to open a conversation now about the U.S. President's emergency plan for AIDS relief, what is called PEPFAR, that was initiated by President George W. Bush. And it has been suspended in terms of funding, and it affects our response to the HIV pandemic in our country. And certainly this is part of President Trump's general suspension of U.S. aid, not just in South Africa, but across the world. He has called for the radical review of the programs that fall under U.S. aid. And in this case, PEPFAR is one of them. We've got to discuss this. Senior Executive for Strategic Trade at Aspen, Dr. Stavros Nicolaou. We've got Deputy Director General for Health Programs at the Department of Health, Mr. Ramapalane Morewani. And then we've got from Public Health Medicine Specialist at Anova Health Institute, Dr. Kate Rees. We've got also Dr. Farid Abdullah from the South African Medical Research Council, and finally from the Treatment Action Campaign, Anele Yawa. They're going to be with us for the whole of this hour to try and basically get to the bottom of appreciating the consequences of this and what the way forward really is. I'm going to start with Anele and Dr. Rees, just to maybe to start with you, Anele, to sort of paint the proper consequences of the suspension of PEPFAR to the tune of $440 million by President Trump. What are the implications of this? And welcome to Power Talk.
Good morning to you, Dr. Ndlozi, and good morning to all the panelists. This executive order, which subsequently led to the stop of order, has dire consequences in our response to HIV, not only in South Africa, but global. But in the context of South Africa, as much as global funds, PEPFAR was funding our AIDS response with about 17%. But when we look in terms of numbers as well as the work that was being done, like for instance, more than 15,000 healthcare workers who were hired through this program and who were seconded within our public health system have been laid off. But we will remember also that PEPFAR had other programs which the National Department of Health was not funding, like for instance, your drop-in centers, where they were providing gender affirmative services for queer population, and those services now are no longer provided. But also at a community level, there were many programs that were funded through this PEPFAR grant, like for instance, your community outreach programs, where there were community care workers who will go to our communities. Either they educate people about HIV prevention, adherence, and all of that. And in some instances, in deep rural areas, you will find out that there were mobile clinics that were testing people for HIV and TB, but also assisting them in terms of providing medicines. And all those services, since the stop work order, have since been suspended. And it is a problem, and it therefore means that both private sector, government, and civil society, we need to work together to ensure that we continue to reach out to those communities in terms of providing services, so that we ensure that no one is disengaging from care, but also we continue to provide services that were provided in those communities. But amongst them all, it is important that since we know that about 15,000 healthcare workers have been laid off, how do we address the question of continuing to decongest our health facilities by ensuring that people living with HIV and those who are stable on treatment are given 3 to 6 multi-month dispensing of medication so that they don't frequent visit to our health establishment? Thank you.
Are you as TAC in any way in terms of the work that you do affected by maybe not directly PEPFAR, but some other form of funding that comes from US aid?
Yes, we are funding.
If so, how much are we talking about, and what kind of work were you doing with that amount?
So, yes, we are affected because as TAC, together with other organizations of people living with HIV, we have been implementing work which is called conjugate monitoring through the Rechita project. And the Rechita was funded by this grant through the UNAIDS, where we were monitoring the quality of services which are provided to people living with HIV, key populations, as well as the general public health care users in 27 districts of our country. And since the stop work order was issued, we had to lay off more than 160 staff members, who the majority of them are people living with HIV and who were working in these communities. So we are directly affected.
And how much are we talking about? Like, what were you receiving from USAID? How much were you receiving?
We were receiving money from UNAID, which is about 58 million per annum.
$58 million?
Yes, no, 1,000 rand. 58 million rand,
58 million rands annually.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to bring in, I don't know if we have Dr. Kate Rees yet online. Yes. Oh, there. Welcome to Power Talk, Doc. Can you walk us through the implications of the withdrawal or suspension of PEPFAR on ANOVA? Maybe firstly, just what is it that you guys do, and the actual implications, and maybe also the numbers of people that are affected, not from a jobs point of view, but the actual work that you are doing around people living with HIV and AIDS.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So ANOVA is one of several large implementing partners that PEPFAR has in South Africa. We are called a DSP, so a district support partner. That means we link really closely with the Department of Health to strengthen their HIV and TB service provision. So we've been complementing the HIV services that the Department of Health is able to provide. And a lot of what Anele has spoken to really explains it. We've worked in the community a lot with outreach, especially for certain populations who find it difficult to access the clinic. We focused on multi-month dispensing, making sure that people get 3 to 6 months of medication, systems for people to access their medication more easily, and I think really working with key populations as well, and with people who are really sick from HIV and need higher levels of referral. And that's all embedded within the government clinics. And so it's quite hard to say how many people are affected. I would say that almost everyone that accesses public health services would be affected. We at ANOVA, we support almost 1 million people on antiretroviral therapy. Now, the government is still going to continue their therapy. It doesn't mean that they're going to stop, but the work that we are doing has impacted on them and will now stop and be more, they might have struggles in accessing certain services.
So when you say 1 million people, what were you doing? Were you providing the ARVs, the actual drugs, or it's just a sort of therapeutic support mechanism?
Yes, so the government provides almost all of the drugs in South Africa. We are really, really lucky, unlike other countries where that is not the case. The drug supply, therefore, can be maintained, and the backbones of the services, the infrastructure, the clinics can be maintained. We're not collapsing to the same extent that many other countries, unfortunately, HIV programs are collapsing. The partners work with the Department of Health. And so it's things like ensuring quality, health system strengthening, helping with information systems, helping with management of staff, allocation of staff, implementing new guidelines. So it's a lot of quality improvement. And we've worked really hard to become embedded with the Department of Health and really integral partners. Which means that it's quite difficult now to disentangle the effects. But unfortunately, because we're losing so many staff members, it does seem likely that waiting times at clinics will go up for everybody, since we'll have fewer people on the ground.
Let me do this, Dr. Rees, for the benefit of our listeners. If the drugs are not affected, I mean, it might be difficult for people to really appreciate the work that you do, and in what form will it affect the provision of quality health care for the people living with HIV/AIDS? Maybe you want to give specific examples of precisely what it is that you were doing. And please repeat that again. Are you saying South Africa's government is actually not going to stop the provision of ARVs? Because that's basically what has been circulating, that this funding is affecting the provision of actual drugs.
So we need to differentiate South Africa from other countries, because this is a global problem. And in South Africa, the government has paid for the vast majority, 90% at least, of all our antiretrovirals. That is not going to stop. That is budget that we have already approved for that. And so that will continue. In other countries in Africa, the story is a little bit different. And so globally, what people are saying is that the provision of art has stopped and has been halted and is in a really precarious position. In South Africa, we're in a very different position where we will still be able to buy the drugs. The clinics are mostly still open. The kind of standard primary care clinics are still open, and anyone who's living with HIV could, in theory, go into those clinics and get medication. So we're much better off than many other places. However, there's a lot more to providing healthcare, and especially chronic healthcare. People with HIV must take medication for their whole life long. There's much more to it than just handing a packet of drugs out. So partners provide thousands and thousands of counselors. Counselors spend time with patients. They understand their problems. They understand their needs. They help them to tell their partners and their families about their HIV status. They help them to come to terms with their HIV status. They help them if they're struggling to come to the clinic, and they try and make a plan for them. So there's that really strong relationship with counselors, and a lot of counselors will be lost, thousands and thousands of counselors.
So how much did your entity, in terms of numbers, how much are we talking about? In what tune are you affected by the suspension of this funding?
I don't know our financials off the top of my head, but what I do know is that we have lost about 3,000 healthcare workers. Those are people who were either doing counseling, data capturing, nurses, working in clinics, or the people that manage them. And that management element is actually crucially important. And unfortunately, the Department of Health is really going to struggle to replace those staff members.
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, on Power 98.7. We're speaking about the USAID entity PEPFAR, which was supporting people living with HIV and AIDS. Before I let you go, Dr. Rees, do you have any alternative plans and strategy to sort of replace this funding?
So, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects. And I think if we talk as a country, we need to look short term, medium term, and long term. And short term, we need to be looking at quite urgent replacement of funding. We're never going to replace all the PEPFAR funding. It's a huge amount, but we really need to be focused on getting emergency funds into priority programs before they start to collapse. I mean, I think they already have started to collapse, but, you know, it is so much easier to break something down than it is to build it up again. And so emergency funding that we can access either through Treasury, through the private sector, through other donors coming together, just to keep these really key priority programs floating so that we don't have to build them all back up again at much greater cost and effort. And then more looking at a kind of more medium, longer term, there's a number of things happening. We desperately waiting to hear what comes out in the budget speech, of course. And we're thinking about the budgets of the future and how the Department of Health might be able to fund partners on a smaller scale, but to provide these really critical services that they aren't able to provide themselves. And private sector, we'd really like to see how we can bring in private sector to support at this crucial time.
Thank you very much, Dr. And I'm going to, I won't be holding you and Anele. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Rees from ANOVA and Anele from the TAC. I want to bring in Dr. Farid Abdullah. What I'm hearing, Doc, I don't know what, it seems to me that we need to reconceptualize the way we think about primary health care, because the work that I'm hearing that is going to be affected, and you can perhaps maybe confirm this, that to all South Africans to know, they are not going to stop receiving ARVs. Everybody that has been receiving ARV is going to receive ARV moving forward. But what the work that is going to be affected has to do with is the sort of support structure that goes along with the reception of treatment. Am I correct with that? And if so, what is the challenge here? Is it Treasury or the Health Department rethinking the primary healthcare model that we have at the moment, to sort of think about it along the lines of health education, preventative care, and all those things that organizations like ANOVA was doing?
Thanks, Mbuyiseni, and thanks for the invitation. I mean, a couple of points to add on. Firstly, it's really important to emphasize that the South African government pays for treatment, pays for the drugs, for the lab investigations, and for the vast majority of staff for the HIV program, and that there will be no interruption from a supply point of view of the drugs. As Kate has mentioned on numerous occasions, at least we have that going for us, in that the South African government, South Africa as a middle-income country, has the resources to be able to provide the basics. Mm-hmm. But what you need to understand, everybody needs to understand, is that this HIV epidemic, affects 8 million people in South Africa. It's a catastrophic event that no normal public health system would be able to deal with without help. Mm. And where we landed with the PEPFAR implementing partners, the NGOs, and the government, is a very nice combination of the two. So I'll give you some specific examples, yes, because I think you desperately want to hear about that. Right? Yes. Now, of the almost 6 million people we have on treatment, drugs paid for by government, lab tests paid for by government, delivered in public sector facilities, about 1 million are not coming for their treatment. That's a massive problem. They're not being retained in care. They're failing their treatment. They've been started on treatment, and they're ending up in hospitals in a very sick state. And as the MRC showed last week, HIV is still the biggest cause of death in South Africa. 23% of South Africans are dying from HIV. Mm. So these partners go out and find these people. It's a massive operation. Find these people, bring them back to the facility through counseling, through calling these people, and I think there's a bit of a lack of appreciation of the complexity of delivering HIV treatment to 8 million people. Under any circumstances, the public sector will be strained in any country, even in a developed country that would struggle to provide treatment. I'll give you another example. A lot of key populations, men who have sex with men, sex workers, adolescent girls, drug users, they do not come to the public sector facilities. So in the case of ANOVA, I'm speaking on behalf of Kate now, there's a dedicated clinic in Cape Town called the Ivan Toms Clinic, which provides services to gay men, and that has been shut down overnight. So all those people going to that facility are not receiving it any longer. And in the HIV world, unless you actually go out and find the key populations, you'll be missing a big part of this.
And in the case of gay men living with HIV and AIDS, they don't go to public facilities largely because of stigma. Am I right?
Exactly, and the same for adolescent girls, and the same for drug users, and the same for transgender women. You know, these are the key populations, and PEPFAR has been forthcoming to say, okay, we will cover this gap. We will provide these services because they require work with the NGOs. So let me take a quick step back. How come have we ended up in a situation where PEPFAR money goes to NGOs? You would think that a substantial portion should go to government, but because government could provide the basics, and because when PEPFAR started, we had a government that didn't want to provide treatment, and PEPFAR started funding small NGOs, which were providing treatment through donor funding, and these NGOs have grown. Like PEPFAR was a very small NGO. Now it's got 3,000 staff. And the same applies to 20 or 30 organizations. But over time, the combination of these NGO-funded activities and government activities delivered at public sector facilities have been the combination we needed to get so many people on treatment with such a massive impact on life expectancy, such an impact on mortality. That's why South Africa can talk about a largely successful HIV response. But to answer your question, and I'm sorry I'm taking so long, is should we change the way we are delivering these services?
Let us pause there, Doc. I'm sorry, and please do stay on the line. We're going to take quick headlines because it's 10:30, and then I want to spend the next 30 minutes really drilling on the way forward, and we're going to also bring in Aspen. Please, we're going to take precisely where you've left off when we come back from the headlines. Let's take the headlines here on Power Talk with Nyakalo Tefu. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Mbuyiseni. Good morning. In news making headlines at this hour, the Springs Magistrates Court is set to hand down bail judgment in the murder case of Ekurhuleni Metro Police Officer Banele Skhosana. Skhosana was gunned down last month while opening his puzzle shop in Guatema. Skhosana's wife, Sbongile Dlamini, is accused of orchestrating the murder. Dlamini, an alleged hitman, last week told the court that they were tortured by the police to make falsified confession statements. Both the accused intend to plead not guilty on all charges, but State Prosecutor Advocate Albrie Klassen says obtained cell phone records show that the accused were in constant communication days before the fatal shooting.
Case number 1 was identified by witnesses on identification parade. Further investigation revealed that applicant hired accused 1 to kill her husband, the deceased. At this stage of the investigation, the state can place on record that there was contact via cell phones between accused 1 and the applicant prior to the shooting of the deceased.
In other news, it's all systems go for Umkhonto weSizwe Party's march in the Pretoria CBD this morning. Members of the party, joined by its Military Veterans League, are currently gathering at Church Square, gearing up for the march to the National Treasury and Reserve Bank. The march is against the 2% VAT increase and the pending liquidation of Ithala Bank. 257,000 depositors at Ithala have not been able to withdraw or deposit funds after the repayment administrator instructed the entity to stop all withdrawals and deposits. The instruction followed an application by the Prudential Authority of the South African Reserve Bank to provisionally liquidate Ithala over claims of legal and technical insolvency. Speaking to Power News ahead of the march, MKP Tshwane regional organizer Mpomorolane had this to say.
It cannot be that a bank that has assisted African business people, farmers, it's being liquidated like that. I mean, and we're saying that no to a liquidation of Ithala. The second issue is the march against the increase on VAT. And it cannot be that the powers that be just takes a decision in saying that there is an increment on VAT. Remember, this VAT is as a result of the shortfall in our fiscus of 60 billion rand.
More on these and other stories at 11.
Power traffic.
A very good morning to you once again. We start off in Davidton. If you're traveling on the N12 westbound, there's a crash that's happened before the Potfontein Road exit. That route is closed off at the moment, so do expect some heavy congestion as well as some local diversions from the N12 highway. That incident's also affecting traffic on the N12 eastbound, heading towards the Kingsway exit. If you're traveling out of the OR Tambo International Airport, you'll bump into some delays on the R24 westbound. Those delays are headed towards the Barbara Road exit. A number of traffic lights around the city of Johannesburg are out this morning. If you're traveling on Bears Nordia Drive, those lights are out in Emiransha. That's at the Judges Avenue intersection. That's actually in Cresta. In Emiransha, traffic lights are out at 3rd and Tana Road. In Craigall, they're out at Buckingham and Jan Smuts Avenue. If you're traveling on Winnie Mandela Drive in Bryanston, traffic lights are out at Sloane as well as at the Dover Road intersection on Malibongwe Drive eastbound in Randburg. Those traffic lights are out at the Hans Kuman Street intersection. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Leboham Pukela.
Power Traffic.
Engaging in conversations that matter. Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, 9 a.m. to midday.
Welcome back to Power Talk. We are still speaking and discussing the question of PEPFAR and its implications that Donald Trump has suspended in South Africa, people living with HIV and AIDS, and our general HIV and AIDS program. Dr. Abdullah?
Yes, thank you. I should just add a few quick things on the impact. One is that, HIV and tuberculosis go hand in hand. And I think that a lot of people haven't pointed out that the impact on our TB program will be equally devastating. I co-chair the TB think tank with the Department of Health, and we estimate that about 500,000 fewer TB tests will be done in South Africa in 2025. And about 50,000 fewer treatments for TB will result from these cutbacks. So a big impact on TB. I work at the Medical Research Council, and I can tell you that some massive grants for cutting-edge research have been affected. So our biggest HIV vaccine research project, which received a $46 million grant from USAID, was stopped overnight. And we also have what we estimate to be about $100 million worth of TB research, not only at the MRC, but across the country that's being affected. Now, if the US came to us and said, look, we have a problem, we've got a different policy now, we can't support you to the same extent as before, I think we would have been prepared to have that conversation with them about, slowly phasing the arrangement over 2 or 3 years. But what has been rather brutal, and done in a callous manner, has been this immediate suspension of everything without an understanding of the impact it will have on lives, on research. When it comes to research, this research is not only for South Africa. This is global cutting-edge research, like an HIV vaccine or a new TB drug developed in South Africa that's made for the whole world, including the US. And science doesn't operate country by country. So US scientists are now starting to wonder if they should partner with South African scientists. That's a massive setback for the global scientific process, for progress in general.
I'll come back to the vaccine because I do have a big interest in it. I want to bring in Dr. Nicolau from Aspen. Doc, firstly, did you have any, as a company, did you have any funding or any forms of partnerships with PEPFAR?
Dr. Ndlozi, firstly, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks,
good morning
to you and all the panelists and the listeners. No, we've received no funding from PEPFAR. But it doesn't mean that as a proudly South African company, we don't have an interest in the conversation that's going on. I think to try and place things in perspective, there are three streams of funding from the US. The PEPFAR, USAID, and the two are interrelated. And then there was a contribution from USAID to UNAID. So it's kind of a triple whammy here for Africa. And I'm going to speak in the African context. And Africa is going to be far more and worse affected than South Africa, because countries such as Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique have a far heavier reliance than we do here in South Africa
on PEPFAR.
On PEPFAR. Now, what are the consequences that I see? And I'm not painting a picture of absolute calamity. This is rather a call for us to come together and find solutions and to roll up our sleeves, but we need to do that with urgency and in a pressing fashion. So the consequences are threefold, in no particular order of preference. The first is, if African programs are disrupted, which they are going to be, we're already seeing this, and there are a number of papers that are demonstrating the impact, you can expect more patients to migrate north into our provinces here in South Africa. So that increases the load on the public health system. And provinces in particular that are affected are Mpumalanga and here where we are in Gauteng. So there's an additional burden we're going to have to deal with here. That's the reality.
From the north.
From the north. And I'm citing specifically Zimbabwe, Zambia, Mozambique, because they have... Swaziland. They have a 90% plus reliance on the American funding for their HIV programs. The second impact is what Farid spoke about, which is the impact on our clinical research and our clinical trial programs in this country. One of the things we can be immensely proud of as South Africans is that we have developed amongst the best expertise in the world around HIV, AIDS and TB research and R&D capabilities, clinical trials, and these are also an income generator for the country, but they also keep us cutting edge. They profile our country in international markets, and if these programs, research programs and otherwise, grind to a halt, it does have a significant impact, not only for South Africa but for the whole world. And I want to stress here, Dr. Ndlozi, that bacteria and viruses know no boundaries. Okay, they hold no passports. They migrate and travel anywhere and everywhere, and it's not in anybody's best interest that South Africa's research clinical trial capability is dented in any form or shape. So we need to address that with urgency. Number 3, and the final point I wanted to make, let's consider what the impact is going to be on the ground here in South Africa. So remember, we're getting around $400 million US dollars worth of funding on average. It's been going on for many years from PEPFAR to support our HIV programs. I'm saying support because we do not have the same reliance as the countries I mentioned earlier. Okay, now, the first thing that needs to happen is the health department is busy or seized with an audit to understand how many people are involved, what are the services exactly that are involved, and where can they be diverted to. Okay. Secondly, I want to be clear and support what Farid, my colleague Farid, was saying. South Africa buys its own antiretrovirals. Unlike some of the other countries I mentioned, we have no reliance on somebody else to fit the bill for the ARVs.
And you as Aspen obviously produce antiretrovirals.
We do, and I think one of the concerns is that we import most of our antiretrovirals into South Africa, which is a different debate for a different day, because we have the biggest HIV program in the world.
Yes.
There's around 5.5 million patients that receive on a monthly basis, day by day, a pill, and it's very sad that we import most of those pills from Asia. It's a different conversation.
So the local production capacity of Aspen hasn't matched the demand.
Correct. And it's not only Aspen, because there are others that produce ARVs in South Africa. And what we should be doing is we should be leveraging our local capacities and capabilities in a much better fashion, so that we not only give security of supply. We saw what happened during COVID. India shut its borders, Europe shut its borders, Africa was at the back end of the queue. We cannot afford that again. We have to continue enhancing our local capacities.
Direct question: Is one of the solutions a complete sort of zero VAT? How do you think that would have a massive sort of impact if there was zero VAT on ARVs?
I don't think it's going to have a huge difference.
I see.
I'll
because they are not privately consumed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's not really going to help us. I think if we are looking at reimagining, what is it that we can do? We've got a crisis now to deal with. The first thing is we need to look internally, and we need to say, well, is there a prospect? And you've just come from Parliament, you'll know this far better than I do. I think we need strong consideration around budget reprioritization and efficiency determination. I think that's the starting point for me. The second thing is, can other donor funders in the interim bridge the gap? Okay, and I'm saying only the interim, because I never want us to be dependent on foreign aid, because we've just seen what happens. We've seen it not only with this but with other things. So we've got to paddle our own canoe in future. But that means that you've got to bridge an immediate gap and then work out how you sustain this on your own in future. How do we do that? I believe that there is significant efficiency gains that can be realized here. And this goes hand in hand with the discussion on industrializing the country, getting a better multiplier impact. I think it's crazy that we import most of these drugs because we're denying the fiscus a tax opportunity here. So there's that element. And then the final thing we need here is, and I'm pleased the health department are doing this, we needed a proper order to see 15,000 health workers were funded by PEPFAR. So we need to understand, are all 15,000 necessary? Of course, it's sad when anybody loses their job, but I think the most immediate need is not to disrupt patient servicing, supplies to patients, the services to patients. That's the most important and immediate need, because Dr. Ndlozi, we can never afford to go back to where we were in our country in 2000 and 2001. We were on the edge of a precipice, far worse than anything. We've experienced a lot of challenges, you know them.
Yeah.
But that was a doom
One
and
of the
gloom
worst
scenario, and we just simply cannot afford to go back. So my final appeal here is, there are solutions. A lot of them lie in how you reprioritize and manage budgets, how you bring in the private sector in private-public collaborations. We've done that during COVID. It was very effective and efficient. We need to bring the public sector back together with the private sector. I know there's a bit of a standoff on NHI. I think we need to see past that, because my difficulty with NHI is we spend hours and weeks as a country debating this, but tomorrow morning there is a patient that's going to pitch up at a health facility.
Let me bring in the DDG. Ndate Morewani, welcome to Power Talk. If you just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're talking PEPFAR and USAID and its implications on our HIV and AIDS program in the country. Ndate Morewani, welcome to Power Talk. Are you there? Ndate Morewani?
No, thank you very much. Yes, I'm here. Dr. Ndlozi, good afternoon, and good afternoon to my other wonderful friends,
yes,
Farid and the other colleagues from all.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly. I've got two direct questions coming from some of the comments that have been made by Farid and Nicolau here, who are with us, about the way forward. My first question, yes, you are audible. Can you hear us?
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible. Can you hear us? Hello?
I'm not sure if I'm audible.
I think...
because I can't hear anything.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I'm sure the team will deal with it. Let me come back to you, Farid. In what form should the primary healthcare clinic be reorganized in response to the cut of funding? And I'm going to ask that Nicolau think about this, but specifically the second question: what should be the Department of Health's prayers in relation to the budget on Wednesday? Specifically in light of the implications PEPFAR has had on our HIV and AIDS program. Farid?
So Ntate Morewane has issued a circular to everybody, every clinic, every department, saying that, we already have HIV services being delivered from the primary care clinic. So already that level of integration exists. But in addition to that, we need all the doctors, all the nurses, all the staff at the public sector facilities to also get involved in treating HIV, because it's our single biggest problem. And then the department needs to provide resources to provinces to be able to do the outreach work. Some of it can be integrated into the public sector, but some services will never be integrated. If you want to provide needle exchange programs to drug users in Pretoria, only NGOs can do that. And that means that a mechanism like Stavros was indicating, like the Solidarity Fund, where government and the private sector can put together a rapid financing instrument to pick up some of the funding for NGOs, not all of it, because we can't match. But at least that could give us the time to sort of transition. So that would be the first thing, really. What the Department of Health should be asking Treasury, well, that's a pretty difficult question. But I can tell you that there are efficiencies to be made within the public sector. There's, provinces are really struggling, and we've been writing a little bit about this with underfunding, but we do have a budget problem. But I think that the health department should, as a minimum, request some short-term funding to support some of the critical functions that the NGOs are providing. In addition to that, making sure that some of the critical support functions are taken over by the health department and funded. And not least of all, to provide some urgent relief for the critical research that we've been doing in this country, so that that's not completely broken.
Are you anywhere close to discovering the vaccine for HIV and AIDS?
Not close, but a whole new strategy to develop vaccines has been developed by Professor Glenda Gray and her team at the MRC, and this was what was funded by USAID. Government and other donors should step forward to support some critical aspects of that. Mm-hmm. I guess not all of it, but some critical aspects of it. In addition to that, in HIV, we have incredible progress with trying to find a cure now. We're trying to use new tools like injectable drugs. And if I could make a remark on the impact of PEPFAR on that generally, for instance, all the generic manufacturers throughout the world, a lot of their volumes were funded by PEPFAR. And the Indian manufacturers, for instance, will start to reconsider their work and their volumes that they produce, with PEPFAR affecting it. I think that opens a door for South African generic companies to step in and for government to work with them. But if you take a drug like lenacapavir, which is the new injectable, PEPFAR was going to provide a lot of funding to provide this, creating the market volumes that we need for rolling it out, bringing the price down. And those global supply chains are now also affected. That will, in the end, affect South Africa, but other countries in the continent. But to answer your question, government should come to the party, even under these difficult budget circumstances, to provide some relief for the PEPFAR program and for critical research.
Dr. Nicolau, is there any work that Aspen is doing on discovering a vaccine Please talk us through that. And in your view, what should the budget on Wednesday do to respond to the implications of the suspension of PEPFAR?
Okay, let me start with the latter question first. Okay, and I'm going to build on what Farid said because I'm in full alignment with him. I'm going to stress 2 points, however. The first thing is, it's a sad day if a nation doesn't invest in its people's healthcare. Okay, healthcare and education are the most fundamental issues for me, and simply Treasury have to find the money. I'm not suggesting they must bridge the entire 4-5 billion rand gap, because I think some things can be redirected, some things can be done more efficiently on the ground, but they certainly need to step in with an appropriation. Okay. The second thing is that we should try and bridge the short-term gap with other funding, but Treasury needs to also think creatively. Things like tax credits on medical schemes are under scrutiny at the moment. Does that provide some opportunity? I think the health department has advanced that logic, and I think that needs to be considered. And then lastly, I think we need to re-look at, outside of NHR, how do the private and public sector work together to bridge this gap now?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on an HIV vaccine, South Africa doesn't have great drug.
Before you go to HIV, I mean,
Yes.
you are private.
Yes.
What is your concrete new relationship with the public sector in relation to the fact that now PEPFAR is no more? Is there something concretely in your operations that you'll be doing differently?
So, look, I think we can step up supply of the drugs. We can do that. As I indicated earlier, it's a sad reality that we have a growing trade deficit in pharmaceuticals year on year. It's not just HIV drugs. You can go across the board. Every year, our import debt, if I can call it that, goes up and up in pharmaceuticals. We need to reimagine and reorientate that. So we can step in and supply more drugs. I think that's the first thing. We've got the capacities. The second thing is the private and public sectors have worked together previously, as I indicated. There's another program that was called the Public Health Enhancement Fund, which was a partnership between 22 healthcare companies and the Department of Health. That raised around 350 million rand, close to 400 million actually, and we put 100 medical students, all from disadvantaged communities, through university from first year straight through to 6th year, qualified them as doctors. Those are doctors that are more likely to go and work in rural areas. The second thing is we funded and sponsored 100 PhDs and master students, all in health sciences fields. That's an example of the Public Health Enhancement Fund. When we have worked together, we don't agree with everything always, the private and public sector, but where we have a common vision, I think we have been successful.
So am I right to say that there isn't some emergency team formed in Aspen to say, what do we do to strengthen public-private partnerships in light of the sort of immediate suspension of PEPFAR funds? Are you reacting as emergently as you should?
So, look, I think that organised business, because I mean, the response during COVID came from organised business. I don't think one single company can do this.
I got you.
So there are discussions around, do we revive the Solidarity Fund? Now, it's not an easy conversation because, as you know, organised business in South Africa is in a partnership with government in many other areas through the Business for South Africa formation, and it is something that we've discussed. But in the absence of getting that, what I call that audit, where you know, where are these people situated, how much is needed exactly, then it can be looked at. I'm not saying it will be supported on this occasion, but you need that information to have the conversation with urgency. Should I comment on the vaccine?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I mean, you are Aspen. You probably do have a research focused on that.
Okay. So South Africa as a country is very good at clinical trials. Okay. We don't to discover, just if I put it very in a cursory fashion, to discover a new drug. Let's say you were going to discover a new drug for, I don't know, lupus, as an example. That's going to cost a company between $1.5 to $2 billion. Okay, so it's unaffordable for any South African company. So how do we rely on our research capabilities? It's through partnerships. And in the case of Aspen, we have really done the country proud in developing manufacturing competence that is recognized globally and worldwide. And I think that's where we would place our focus, is can we leverage domestic and continental volumes to ensure security of supply and health security on the continent. Dr. Ndlozi, I'm talking a lot about Africa because I see part of the solution here. It's not just about solving South Africa's healthcare problem, because inevitably, if we have a functional health system here, but it doesn't function in Mozambique, it lands up being our problem. So we need to help ourselves to help the continent as well.
That's Dr. Nicolau. The hour is normally never enough. I'm going to thank you both, gentlemen. Dr. Farid Abdullah, thank you so much for joining us, as well as Dr. Nicolau, who is here in studio. We're going to continue for 15 minutes or so with the DDG, who we couldn't get. And I'm going to put some of these questions and proposed solutions to him from the two gentlemen that we had in this segment of the conversation. Thank you deeply. We're going to take the news with Nyakalo Tefu. Stay tuned. On the other side, we've got as well Naz Borda. Thank you.
Power News.
The top stories at this hour: several streets have been cordoned off in the Pretoria CBD to make way for Mkhonto weSizwe Party's march, and Transport Minister says the families who lost their loved ones in the tragic Free State crash will now be able to view their bodies. With the news at 11, a very good morning to you. I'm Nyakalo Tefu. Several streets have been cordoned off in the Pretoria CBD to make way for Mkhonto weSizwe's Sizwe Party's march. Members of the party, joined by its Military Veterans League, are currently gathering at Church Square ahead of the march to the National Treasury and Reserve Bank. The march is against the 2% VAT increase and the pending liquidation of Itala Bank. We now cross live to Power News' Lerato Motsa, who is there. Lerato, it's all systems go that side.
Well, indeed, Nyakalo, all is set for MK Party's march. The party's leadership, which includes Mzwana Lemani, Lati Montana, and Siyabonga Gama, are among members of parliament joining today's march. They're expecting 3,000 members to march to Treasury and Reserve Bank. The party is calling on Treasury to save Itala Bank, arguing that since it was established in 1958, it has assisted African business people, especially farmers. It will also hand over a memorandum of demands at the Reserve Bank, as it says a no to VAT increase, defending that the poor already find it difficult to put food on the table. Speaking to Power News, MK Party Member of Parliament, Lati Montana, had this to say.
Let's give relief to South African households, and within that is something that can be done. Within the Minister of Finance in particular should also go and zero-rate more foodstuffs. Very recently we received a presentation from Stats SA, Statistics South Africa, which indicate that the majority of South Africans spend over 60% of their income, disposable income, on food, on transport, and of course on electricity. So it's quite clear that there are clear areas where we can give relief to South Africans today.
Police are on site to monitor the march. Lerato Mosa, Power News, reporting live from Church Square in Pretoria.
In other news, Transport Minister Barbara Creasy says the 10 families who lost their loved ones in the tragic Free State crash will now be allowed to view their bodies. The minister says this is due to the completion of autopsies for investigations by forensic pathologists. The crash, which claimed 10 lives and injured 22 others, occurred earlier this week on the N16 not far from Reddersburg towards Smithsfield, resulting in the death of 10 individuals. The minister briefed the media earlier this morning as she visited the 2 remaining patients at Pelomoni Accident and Emergency Unit to assess their recovery. She says PRASA has been very supportive to all affected families during this period.
PRASA has offered extensive support to the injured passengers and also to their families, as well as to the families who have sadly lost their loved ones. This support includes site visits, it includes transport and accommodation, it includes the registration of deaths and the repatriation of mortal remains, and of course it also includes trauma counselling.
Creasy further adds that the main priority is to give closure to the affected families.
It is important to share with you that the autopsies have already been conducted, and today families of the deceased will be viewing their bodies. Unfortunately, 4 of the bodies have not been able to be identified, and we are having to do work with Home Affairs so that we can identify these patients through fingerprints, and obviously we would then be in a position to give closure to the families.
The Springs Magistrates Court is set to hand down bail judgment in the murder case of Ekurhuleni Metro Police Officer Banele Skosana. Skosana was gunned down last month while opening his puzzle shop in Guatema. Skosana's wife, Sibongile Dlamini, is accused of orchestrating the murder. Dlamini, an alleged hitman, last week told the court that they were tortured by the police to make falsified confession statements. Both the accused intend to plead not guilty on all charges, but State Prosecutor Advocate Albry Klassen says obtained cell phone records show that the accused were in constant communication days before the fatal shooting.
Accused number 1 was identified by witnesses on an identification parade. Further investigation revealed that applicant hired accused 1 to kill her husband, the deceased. At this stage of the investigation, the state can place on record that there was contact via cell phones between accused 1 and the applicant prior to the shooting of the deceased.
And the Johannesburg Metro Police Department says motorists travelling from Fulo Central and Orlando West must be cautious of significant traffic disruptions on major roads in both areas. This is due to ongoing protests by various taxi operators due to an ongoing dispute between the Witwatersrand Taxi Associations and the Mansfield Dube West Taxi Association. The dispute follows judgment this past week from the Johannesburg High Court, which ruled in Water's favour, preventing the Gauteng Provincial Regulatory Entity from allowing Nandue to operate on disputed routes. The judgment reverses a ruling that prevented Water to operate on certain routes, further fueling tensions of a long-standing conflict. The JMPD has requested that motorists use alternative routes such as the Chris Hani Road, Soweto Highway and the Moroka-Nansfield Road. Mfolo community leader Tulani Madiba shares more.
Mengicela ukuthi abantu babe careful abayogibela amateksi ayedrobheni, especially ayizo approach i-cross road. Sicela babe careful, kunempi eyamateksi, so sicela ukuthi abagibeli babe careful and ukuthi abantu abahamba ngeenyawo bangasondeli kakhulu ngase-cross road. Emphakathini siyacela ukuthi wonke umuntu aphephe and masisaveni impilo zabantu. So mengicela siavoideni ukundlula ngase-cross road. Let's use another roads esingasebenzisa.
A look at your financial indicators. The rand is trading at 18 rand 31 cents to the US dollar, 23 rand 60 cents to the pound, 19 rand 81 cents to the euro. Gold's trading at $2,898.52 a fine ounce. Our Brent crude oil is at $70.40 a barrel. Recapping the top story in Power News at this hour, several streets have been cordoned off in the Pretoria CBD to make way for Mkhonto weSizwe Party's march.
Power News on FM, online, and DSTV channel 889. This is Power 98.7.
Stay informed. Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, 9 a.m. to midday on Power 98.7.
Welcome to Power Talk. Indeed, we are going to wrap up the conversation with the DG of Health regarding PEPFAR, the US funding, which has had or is anticipated to have huge implications on the people living with HIV and AIDS. Ntate Morewani, I don't know if you can hear us now. Ntate Morewani? It looks like we might still be having connectivity problems. I'm going to try again. They're going to try again to bring him back. What is important and what came out in a very fundamental way is that there is no disruption, and we'll confirm this with the DDG. There will actually not be any disruption in relation to the provision of actual drugs, of actual ARVs. If you are a patient, if you are a person living with HIV and AIDS, you will be able to still get the ARVs. The program's implications in relation to PEPFAR is the sort of support structure, and we are told about 1 million people who are living with HIV and AIDS and often do not come for treatment. And these programs help with regards to pulling these people into treatment on the one hand, and this is through clinics, through programs that actually fetch them from their homes and assist them to be compliant. It looks like we've got the DDG back. Ntate Morewani, are you with us?
I'm here, sir.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. On which part of the world are you where you are struggling with network? Or is it load shedding?
I'm in eThekwini, in the center for your information.
Yeah, that shouldn't be hard. But thank you so much for your patience. I want to start with this, I think, central point, and for the department to confirm for us. Is it true that indeed PEPFAR didn't or is not going to affect the actual provision of ARVs, that is not what is affected, that they'll continue in most of the parts of the country where ARVs were being found by patients, they will continue to find them?
No, so thank you very much for allowing us an opportunity. And I really listened to an interesting discussion before the news, and the people that we were working with were really very truthful in reflecting on the situation. I think, Dr. Ndlozi, we need to locate the availability of ARVs at 2 points. We are providing, as South African Government Department of Health, 90% of the ARVs from the domestic funding. Mm-hmm. And that we can tell every South African will not run short of ARVs when they go to the clinics. But with regard to what the impact of the withdrawal of the fund of PEPFAR support would do or may do is that you may find that in areas where there have also been some mobile services, in areas where they had deployed additional staff in our facilities, then the staff that's remaining may be 2, 3, 4 people less than what they used to be. And therefore, people may then experience some delay in terms of, accessing their medication, almost like in any shop. If 4 tellers were to take a break, you'd see the queues increasing. I think that's what people will experience. But in terms of availability of medicines, I want to assure South Africans we don't have problems with that, because we have stocked the adequate supply in our pharmaceutical depots and even in the facilities. That I can assure South Africans that we'll have.
So what when you say 90%, who provides the 10%, and how does that feature in the statement that you just made, that there won't be an actual impact on the availability of drugs, maybe slowness, but not the actual availability? And yet you say you pay for 90%. Who pays for the 10%, and how should we think about it?
No, that's correct. The 10% of the drugs that we then complete 100% supply is funded by Global Fund. Global Fund is an entity of governments of the world who are contributing in the fight against HIV, AIDS, TB, and malaria.
So it's not PEPFAR?
No, it's not PEPFAR. And it's got no relationship with PEPFAR. So that is what we then proudly say to ourselves. we've got back-to-back coverage of 100% supply.
Direct question. Didn't you know as the department that this day would come? I mean, this was foreign aid. Foreign aid means you are living on the mercy of some government. It can wake up in the morning, take a decision to stop foreign aid. Didn't you know as a department that this day would come? And if you did, what was the plan?
We knew, like any other relationship that's based on material benefits, even emotional benefits. I mean, one time or another, one partner may feel disenfranchised, may feel disgruntled, may feel whatever, they may then pull out. But we have always thought that in the world of civility, a partner that pulls out gives you some time to say, my friend, my dear colleague, we think we should give each other about 3 months or so that before we terminate our relationship, because the objectives that which we met do not exist anymore. Therefore, let's cut ties. So that's what we had thought. But we had not thought that it will be one night, a decision is made, and the decision is not even communicated directly to you. You get to hear about it through media, through the organizations that are receiving the support from you, that now we're cutting the support. So obviously that threw us into some period of confusion to say, if somebody is still going to tell us, but was never at that time the letter, dear Minister, or dear Ramkelani Marawane, or dear, we want to inform you of this. So we picked it up. But what we did, because we knew it would come, we then immediately convened a meeting of all provincial managers responsible for HIV and AIDS and TB, and then designed a contingency plan to ensure that nobody that is on treatment is unable to receive their treatment simply because of the pause. And that we have done, and I can say to the relative satisfaction of ourselves and the users, because we have met with all affected organizations. You know, when I think just Farid explained it, can I just describe to you the kind of, I want to just with respect, call them groupings, the groups that are supported. We've got the researchers and research organizations and establishments and academic organizations in one block, which is people that are doing a massive amount of good work. We then have in the corner people that were employed by the NGOs that today will go home without their salary because they are unemployed. And naturally, you'd expect such people to also raise their voices because it's really throwing them into a spin in terms of economic, downturn. The third group is the group of people that were the recipients of these services, both on the treatment and prevention part. We have tried to cover as far as possible representatives of all these groupings, all of them. The last grouping we met was the group of people that are receiving treatment and prevention. We met them on Friday. And in all these cases, we have been able to understand the contribution that they will make in helping us carry the load through. Yeah. The last point that I want to make is that one of the colleagues, I think is a colleague that came towards the end, was to say, in our analysis, because we did a full analysis, Dr. Ndlozi, of knowing where is each and every person that was appointed here, what service they were rendering, what is their category, which organizations they were working for. Now we know where all of them were. Of course, there may be somebody who may have missed. I don't want to claim 100% cover, but we have to the extent that we could cover everybody up to almost 24,000 or so people. But we also had to recategorize them into patients-facing people that are every day dealing with these individuals in our health facilities, which is what brought us to 15,154 people. Then we realized that the balance is those that are doing prevention work in the communities, because what we call key populations are not necessarily going to confidently come to public health facilities because of stigma that they are they'll be stigmatized and discriminated against. Because, for an example, men having sex with men may not be happy to come to public health facilities.
Because of time, Ndada Morewa, and I apologize for this, Ndada Morewa, I get that. I want to push you in your closing statement when you wrap up 2 urgent questions. Are you thinking about the pressure on the health system from outside the country, Swaziland, Zimbabwe? Is there a plan? And secondly, what will be your prayers in relation to the budget on Wednesday? Just in the next 2 minutes, and I apologize for that because of time, and maybe we will make more time later in the week. But if you could cover those two aspects in your closing remarks. Firstly, is there a plan for the pressure that is going to come to our health system from the north of the border? One, and secondly, what will you be looking for from Treasury in light of this impact by PEPFAR?
Yeah, in about 10 minutes and a half, let me just deal with it. In terms of the pressure, we issued a circular, and that circular, among others, it says those patients that are stable on treatment, have been stable, clinically confirmed, they must then be given time to move out of the facilities to collect their treatment in other pickup points through what we call CCMDD, Centralized Chronic Medicine Dispensing and Distribution Points, so that they give way, for lesser people to be congregating there. But we are right that we may face pressure from those that are supported by PEPFAR in cross-border areas. I think that's another layer that we still need to think quite carefully. But for now, we've thought about those that are in our radar screen in terms of what do we do now. The second one is about what prayers are we making. The analysis we have done is to enable us to approach Treasury and say, give us funding that will be able to close the gap to the extent that there is no disruption of services. And we are aware we may not be able to match the 7 billion that we're getting from PEPFAR. But when we get it, we've got an idea of reprioritization of what to do, which we will incrementally reintroduce other services that may become necessary. I'm not sure if I cover those, but I welcome the fact that we may have to return, just to take it much further.
Yes.
So that South Africans can be
there are
informed.
interesting suggestions. If you could just hold on for the next 5 minutes. If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are speaking PEPFAR, and the last guest is Mr. Murewani. I've got a caller here, Mr. Murewani, from Pretoria, Matsieba. Matsibi, all right. Please, I think this is an interesting suggestion for Ndade Murewane in the health department. Please shoot in 1 minute.
Thank you, Doctor. And Ndade Murewane, I think the best thing here is for us as Africans to start being self-reliant, in which way we have got this lotto money that comes in every day and every week. That can be used to sustain that 10% that is being sponsored by somebody else. And again, for pharmaceutical industry to be developed, let's look at what Traore is doing in his country. Do that, rely on ourselves, and use most of our universities for that research, because we are just learning, and we are. I think most of us are just educated, because if you are educated, you are able to apply what we have learned to help your nation. And also when you do research, you do the research to find the solution to the challenges that we have at the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ndade Murewani, that's a suggestion that I thought you must go with. You don't have to reply to it, but thank you so much for coming through. We'll definitely keep in touch. And sorry?
In about half a minute, can I just say something?
Okay.
To say that, one of the things we'll discuss when we return is that ministers met with private sectors, met with other sectors. We're considering all these options. About self-reliance, we have adopted a policy that says we must be on our own.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're closing that conversation now. We're going to move to Naz Botha, the legendary rugby player. And please stay tuned. This is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. And thanks for that conversation on PEPFAR.
Talking about what matters.
The reality is that US aid has often been abused by the CIA, providing cover for all forms of interference in foreign governments. At some point, there was an actual open partnership between US aid and the CIA, basically sponsoring protests and trying to spread the liberal values of the liberal democratic order. And Donald Trump's call for the radical review of those funds is something the peoples of the South South and peoples of other parts of the world have often called for, because US aid has been used as a weapon for US interference. That the core of his attitude towards South Africa, it's not just AfriForum. In fact, AfriForum is epiphenomenal. The true reason that was stated by his government has to do with South Africa's position on Israel-Palestine.
Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
The Hatfield Motor Group is thrilled to bring you BYD Woodmead, where innovation meets affordability. BYD stands for Build Your Dreams, and we're here to make that a reality. Experience the future of driving with the BYD range, including the dynamic Atto 3, the versatile Dolphin, and the sleek newly launched Seal. Visit BYD Woodmead today and take your next step towards electric excellence. HatfieldGroup.co.za, rated #1 in service. Build your dreams with BYD.
Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, where your voice is heard and opinion matters.
We've got in studio the legendary Heinrich Nas Botha, the legendary rugby player. Most of his career, obviously, played out in the main under the dark days of apartheid, but he has remained an important voice in the sport and particularly in development level, still interacting, and I see to this day with some of the teams in the schools. Welcome to Power Talk, and thanks so much for coming. Sincere apologies for eating into your time with PEPFAR and the HIV/AIDS pandemic.
No problem. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. To break the ice, you spent your legendary years in these years where South Africa's rugby and rugby union were banned from the international community. Just walk us through how it was to be of that talent under those conditions.
Yeah, it's easy now. You know, we can make it a very emotional thing, or, I would rather look at it in a realistic way to say that, at the end, I was fortunate enough to play 28 internationals for South Africa. I could have actually played 0. I think everybody included that played rugby in those days. There's a number of guys out there that never played for the Springboks, that should have played for the Springboks. But the easy way out is to say, don't mix politics and sport. But unfortunately, you know and I know, that is just a myth. It's never going to work. There will always be a combination of politics and sport. And at the end, I'm not too emotional about it. I believe I had an opportunity. Maybe I did use it to the best of my ability. I was not obsessed about winning, but I always believed, especially in those days, every time we played, we had an opportunity to play an international, my attitude was very, very straight. We have to win. And then people would look like, why? And I said, because the rest of the world don't want to play against losers. And let's get back to today. Why do you think everybody would love to play against the Springboks? Because we won 2 World Cups in a row. Rassie and really the players at the moment are doing an extremely good job. And that's why I say, unfortunately, yes, wrong time. Unfortunately, politics did play a major part. I take 81 for argument's sake. When we went to New Zealand on a very difficult tour where we weren't allowed to say anything. Instead of empower us by giving us some knowledge that if you do ask me a question, I can give you a proper answer. But it was a little bit like, don't say too much, and you're here to play rugby. Absolutely. I actually saw it that I played rugby because I represented my country. That's what I did. When I played for the Springboks, I always say people need to understand. On that given day, you're one of 15 players representing 30, 40 million people, as Francois said after winning the World Cup in 95. It's not the guys only on the field. It's everybody in this country. And you know and I know, since 95, is actually the building blocks for success. People look up at the rugby because we extremely successful since 95 playing World Cups. Yes, we did go through some stages where there was not a nice word you could say about our results. We did play some bad rugby at stages. But that's just, I would say, the way life works, isn't it?
I do want to come back to these politics because I think they're haunting us again in a different form. And how rugby has been central to Madiba's project, to many presidents after him in bringing the country together. People together across races, across classes. We're going to take the headlines with Nyakallo Tefu. Please stay tuned. We're in a conversation with the legendary Nas Botha. It's a Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Let's take the headlines. Nyakallo.
Thanks, Mbuyiseni. Good morning once again. In news making headlines at this hour, Transport Minister Barbara Creecy says the 10 families who lost their loved ones in the tragic Free State crash will now be allowed to view their bodies. The minister says this is due to the completion of autopsies for investigations by forensic pathologists. The crash, which claimed 10 lives and injured 22 others, occurred earlier this week on the N16, not far from Reddersburg towards Smithsfield, resulting in the death of 10 individuals. The minister briefed the media earlier this morning as she visited the 2 remaining patients at Pilomoni Accident and Emergency Unit to assess their recovery. She says PRASA has been very supportive to all affected families during this period.
PRASA has offered extensive support to the injured passengers and also to their families, as well as to the families who have sadly lost their loved ones. This support includes site visits, it includes transport and accommodation, it includes the registration of deaths and the repatriation of mortal remains, and of course it also includes trauma counselling.
In other news, Pick n Pay employees working at the store's Silverton Crossing branch in the city of Tshwane are currently picketing against plans to retrench workers. Employees say some 51 staffers have already been affected by the company's unfair retrenchment practices. Workers, with the support of the EFF in the region, say they have not been formally informed of the retrenchment plans.
This lack of transparency has caused unnecessary confusion and distress as they are uncertain about their entitlements and the steps they need to take. Despite attempts to resolve the matter through dialogue, Pick n Pay legal representatives have refused to engage with the EFF, sparking concerns about the company's commitment to treat its employees fairly.
More on these and other stories at 12.
Your daily dose of great and insightful conversations, preparing you for the day ahead. Power Talk on Power 98.7.
Welcome back to Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are having a guest in studio, the legendary Nas Botha, and talking about rugby and nation building. I want to go back to 2 things. One is 1981. I watched, I'm very younger than that. I watched on a lot of documentaries about South Africa's rugby team and the international sports boycott. You say you were there in 81 when New Zealanders came into the field and actually did a sit-in refusing the Springbok to play. I mean, you were obviously talented player, young. Did that in any way have an impact in you and your understanding of race and racism and its place in the world at the time, the fact that people were rejecting apartheid?
There's different ways to look at it, and that's what I said to you a little bit earlier. Fortunately, I'm not too emotional about things. That doesn't mean I'm not interested in things. The one game was cancelled in Hamilton because they invaded the field and we weren't allowed to play. And then also the last international, the flower bomb test, where the guy with the little plane threw things out the plane. Okay. The thing that I actually felt that bothered me for a while is that we had actually families fighting families in New Zealand. Now that's not the way to go about things. Think about it. You won the tour, I don't want the tour. So now we're two brothers. Now we actually have different opinions. So we saw people trying to get into the field, and we saw people keeping them out. And I thought that's a little bit far. Is sport worth it? And I'm serious. Is sport worth that? To break up families. So that was the only thing that I can actually take out of that tour that bothered me. We were on our way to play snooker one day, and somebody tried to run us over on the pavement. So she got arrested, if I can put it that way. So it was an interesting tour. If you look at people stay in 5-star hotels, we stayed in squash courts for 3 days before you play an international. So there's so many things, but at the end, and I'm very serious about this, at the end, as a rugby player, I always felt there's one place I would love to tour actually two places to tour as a rugby player. New Zealand, and South Africa in South Africa. I think that to tour South Africa and play the Springboks in South Africa must be the ultimate for a non-South African. And that's how I felt about playing against the All Blacks. We can sit here and it's going to take a little bit longer to discuss, was it correct? Wasn't it correct? Those answers I really can't give you, because I actually regarded myself as a sportsman, and I tried to behave and be an ambassador to the country.
But of course, rugby in the hands of apartheid politicians was something else. It was a very proud a team that represented, the fact that apartheid could work, that a white supremacist agenda could survive. And certainly in the hands of Nelson Mandela as well, and the government thereafter, rugby became important as something that must destabilize a racist society, that must build a nation across, rainbow dimensions, or a rainbow nation, as it were. So to the extent to which it brings fans together, it's an important tool, although it's about talent. But you would agree that for apartheid and what it meant to it was certainly something that is wrong.
Absolutely. I can give you an example, some simple example. I was, as I mentioned to you, fortunate enough to play 28 internationals. In normal circumstances, I could have played over maybe 100 internationals. I saw brilliant talent playing with me that never represented the Springboks. Never. I played against some of the better guys, and we're not talking colour here, we're talking rugby players, okay, that never played for the Springboks. So how unfair was the whole situation to everybody? In 1990, I actually wanted to organize a rugby game in Soweto. So I went with police escort and whatever, and I met the mayor of Soweto a couple of times. And we nearly pulled it through. But then, of course, it was cancelled. So, I thought at that stage, and I had some friends, okay, that actually phoned me and said, "Are you seriously organizing a game in Soweto?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "I will not talk to you again." And some of the guys never spoke to me again. But, you know, that's why I say, you know, that's who I am. You know, never really, I'm a little bit more into politics now to make sure that, you know, we know what's going on around us. But if you take 95, and I still blame rugby people because we broke the ice by winning that World Cup. Come on, let's be fair now. Francois Pina and the team. I still believe it's the greatest sporting moment in our history. Okay? We never built on that. Why not? I take the Bulls. Went to Soweto a couple of times. Played some games. Look at the support we had. Look at the support we had. Okay? Why didn't they build on that? You know, that's where I'm getting frustrated. Because we should utilize these opportunities to build the nation. Winning 2 World Cups now in a row. Look what it did for South Africa. The thing is, people worry about, and I'm not breaking any system or structures down. Who cares who wins the Currie Cup at the moment? Nobody. Only South Africans, let's be fair. And of course you have to. Okay? URC, us and a couple of teams in France, Ireland, Scotland and Wales and Italy. Investor Cup, then you pull England and France. Winning the World Cup, everybody in the world knows who South Africa is. And that's the magnitude of winning World Cups. And that's the power thing of winning World Cups. But we can't just win the World Cup and be festive for a month or two. We should utilize all this to actually be a better nation, isn't it? To actually sit around the table and agree about more things than we actually disagree with. And I would love to see the day. Maybe I won't see it in my lifetime, but I would love to see the day where we sit around the table and talk as South Africans, and not this South African or that South African.
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We are having a conversation with the legendary Nas Botha. We're going to take lines if you want to interact with him. 0861 987 000. That's our studio line. Our WhatsApp line 083 303 7093. You're saying now you are more political than you used to be, and I want to pull you into this conversation about the significance of rugby. Some of us, and certainly me, have very little relationship, as it were. We still think there's still a lot of transformation that needs to happen. And you mentioned these moments when there was an opportunity to build on the 1995 moment and the 2 World Cups, to navigate racial barriers. So what are your politics today? If, God forbid, you get 20 more years, what are the practical ways you think a building up would materialize with regards to making the sport more accessible to the marginalized communities, to black players, to black supporters in South Africa?
Firstly, I would think that we need to create opportunities for everybody. I think there's a lot of people that's doing extremely good work in that field. Okay, I'm at Eldorraine High School. We actually went to see another high school to actually work with us, but there's certain things that we need to sort out, the nitty-gritty, for that to make it happen. 99% of their players are black. Okay, so that it's not. See, I'm not a guy for. How can I put it? I've got a nice word, but it's not a word that you use on air. For nonsense. You know,
oh, that's a good word.
I've got a better word, but that's the one I'm not going to use.
This is the good one. Nonsense. Okay.
That will be very self-explaining. I think on the other thing is what we need to also do, and I'm going to give you, and this is only my opinion. There's nobody else's opinion.
Yes.
We find a diamond in the middle of Soweto. What do we do first? Pull him to a white school. And I don't mean it badly. You know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's time for Soweto to have a sports school and keep their own diamonds there and help making sure that we develop those diamonds. Because if you take some of the greatest sportsmen in this country, weren't white. And if you were actually calling me a quota player, I would actually be quite upset there. Because it's all, for me, it's about one thing, it's about talent. If you're the best guy, if South Africa in the next World Cup have 15 black guys playing for South Africa, are you going to support them? Yes. Am I going to support them? Absolutely yes. Why? Because they're the best. See, I don't see, and I know people can say, oh, but that's a cliche word. I don't see color. I don't see it. I look at talent.
I see.
That's all I'm looking at. If you're the best and you deserve to play, you play. And that's the end of it. So that's the way I take everything in life. If you're the best, then you do the job. And that's my point of view. That's why I say that's my attitude. And I would love to see. I actually went to see the Minister of Sport in 1986. Okay, were you born then?
Yes. I was around.
Okay, you were around. And I said to him, seriously, let's do what I've explained to you. Let's start sports schools. Soweto, Kailicho, at Richmond. I said, let's do all that. And the response I actually got is, yeah, but the white schools won't like that. And I was like, I never understood that, you know. And that's why I think what we need to do is we need to create opportunities for so many young black kids to be there in their own right, not because of the system. And that's not where we are at the moment. You know that, and I know that.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say, we don't want to see that
because it robs us of talent.
Absolutely, that's the thing. You know, we spoke about Jacques Callis. There must be more Jacques Callises walking around somewhere.
Yeah.
Or A.B. de Villiers. Or Rabada. There must be more. But if we don't give him an opportunity, where are we going to find them? And if we find them, it's like, and I'm going to give you a simple example. Okay? Take me. You take me when I was playing half or right rugby, okay? And stick me into Soweto and say perform. I'm asking you the question. Now, why do we do it the other way?
The other way.
That's what I don't understand.
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're having a conversation with Naz Botha, icon of our country, and certainly in the rugby, sports. We've got at the moment, the politics, a huge campaign by AfriForum. You a member of AfriForum?
No.
But we've got a huge campaign by AfriForum that basically is making a case that white people are under a genocidal attack in the country. And this is beginning to mobilize an isolation for South Africa. Sanctions, withdrawal of certain fundings, and so on and so forth. And I'm saying, for me, for people who have believed in what the Springboks do from 1995 and during the 2 Rugby World Cups of bringing together, and it means that AfriForum is basically threatening the Rainbow Nation project, because their solution is, let's go to the US as African people. And as an icon who has lived on both sides of the reality, what is your reaction to that?
My reaction is very simple. We must take the situation as is at the moment, okay? And we must make South Africa open to every single South African. To come and blame me for apartheid, I think it's quite ridiculous. It's a couple of guys in the 60s that decided, okay, this sounds like a good idea. Let's incorporate this. And that's the way I've always looked at it. And I've never been the greatest supporter of apartheid. Okay, and I lost friends through that. But I don't really care about it. It's, for me, it's the most important thing is, what are we doing as a country? Because we live in South Africa. So is everybody now packing their bags and go? That's the question. Are you asking me, will I go?
I'm asking you your reaction to the claims of AfriForum.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you do ask me a question, will
are you
go?
packing? Okay, are you packing?
Not yet.
I see. Why would you pack?
No, I don't think I would. We actually doing quite. We've got a company that's working on genetic brain profiling, and I think it can assist everybody in the world. So we might be in a situation where we work all over the world. Okay, so am I going to pack my bags and go? No, but if it comes down to that, the business, like any other business, takes you to somewhere else, then we would actually consider that. But it's got nothing to do with the politics.
I see.
Absolutely
but
nothing.
Are those the correct politics that AfriForum is campaigning about in the US? Don't you think it's important to outrightly say that is wrong and this country can work and the problems of this country must be resolved by the people of this country?
See, the thing is,
since you don't have this identification with packing and leaving, because
I think the biggest problem for South Africa for many years is we're not getting informed correctly. Why do people do things? Even you can talk any government, they never inform the people. Who puts them in positions to run the country? The people. So any decision they make must be to the advantage of whom? Of the people. Not of them. I've got a question that I always throw around. People talk about government land. And then I ask the question, but isn't all the land the land of South Africans? Why is it the government land? Now tomorrow we've got another government and it's another group of people that's deciding about land. You see where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a different angle. I say South Africa belongs to every single person that's living here, that's South African. Okay, that's South African. That's the way I look at it. So don't come with government land. It's not their land. It's our land. You and me.
Got you. We're going to take your calls if you've just joined us. This is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're having a conversation with an icon of rugby and certainly a big figure, particularly in the Afrikaner community, but also across the country, Nas Bota. We've got Mpho from Johannesburg. Mpho, welcome to Power Talk.
Thank you for having me. Interesting perspective from, I'd say the host is a legend and the guest is a legend, I guess.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things, and I've seen, because my hair is not grey enough to have seen Nas play a lot of rugby, but as a broadcaster with anything else. One of the things that always just, they say it's an itch under my skin. It's the fact that how easy or how difficult is it for a former player of color to get into broadcasting and have the same understanding, the same teaching. I mean, when these guys are sports people, they don't exactly say they were bettering their broadcasting skills. But those of color, there seems to be lesser understanding, lesser patience on them, to a point whereby you can even note the condescending tones that are there, or their opinion being second-guessed by their fellow colleagues. Has nothing, because sometimes you see it. I mean, you've got the Ashwin Willemse situation that happened in Randburg, and you then go, but was the issue that you're talking about, was it the play that was discussed, or was it now on a personal level that became an issue?
Thank you, Mpho from Johannesburg. Let's take Lucas from Centurion. Welcome to Power Talk.
Hello, Mbuyiseni.
Hello, Lucas.
Anos, Onas, hoe gaan het bij jou kan?
Het gaat baie goed, dankie.
Dat kan niet slaan nie, man. Ik heb net een paar kwesties bij jou daar zo, man. Firstly, I want to talk about...
Afrikaans verstaan nie, maar so please accommodate me if I'm going to coordinate.
Yeah, no, let's me convert to English.
Yeah.
I have a question for Nasbe. There's a problem about facilities in this country, you know. If you remember, after 2010 World Cup, we built some stadiums, some were upgraded. And we have a few rugby unions that rush to leave those soccer facilities. For example, Puma Rugby Union, Mpumalanga Pumas, were leasing Puma Rugby Stadium in Witbank, Emalahleni. And we have Newlands, which was leased by the Western Province. Now they are leasing Cape Town Stadium. And I don't know why. And I want to ask him about the hosting Springbok games in our townships. If you remember, before 2010, the Blue Bulls hosted their match in Orlando Stadium.
Yeah.
And it was a big economic spin-off for the businesses in Soweto, especially Vilakazi Street, as you know. I don't know, since then, we don't hear much about taking games to our black communities. Because rugby, if you look at it now, if you can break through to rugby, I'm telling you, you are in for good.
Thank you, Lucas.
So this is one of the very, very prosperous sports in our country. That's why Donald Trump wants to bring them in their country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lucas. We're going to take the last call. You've got 1 minute, and I apologize for that. Petros from Mpumalanga. The legend is listening. Welcome to Power Talk.
Good morning, Doctor, and the legend. All I can say is thanks, Nasri, and the other players who played in the first South African rugby team after we gained freedom. But my question is, what can be done to encourage our black players to play rugby? Because in most of the teams that are playing, we see it's mostly white players that are playing. So what is it that we can do at black schools? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I know it's a lot, but I'm sure you can deal with it.
Now, just quickly, on the Ashwin Willemse thing is, and I'm not looking at any excuses. Nothing happened seriously during the studio. It was all a time thing. And that came out in all the investigations we had. And we were found not guilty of any racism. There wasn't any racism. So, and I've never seen myself as a racist. So I'm going to be very upset if somebody calls me that. Okay. And then secondly, opportunities. You know, I mentioned it to you. We need to create more opportunities. We need to keep people where they feel surrounded. I spoke to a guy from St. John's one day, black guy. And he said to me, you know what's my problem? I said, no, explain to me, because we don't know. Okay, it's not that we're trying to play stupid, but we don't know. He said, I talk rugby from Monday till Friday. Then I go home on the weekend, and my parents only talk soccer. You see, and that's where Sia and the guys and Mampimpi and those guys play a major, major part because young people need heroes. They need people to look up to, and they need to put the dream on the table and say, I'm dreaming to play for the Springboks because of a Sia, a Mapimpi, a Colby. That's what we need. Okay? And we need more of those, and those guys. And the thing that I really appreciate at the moment, the guys that's playing for South Africa, they're playing there because they are the best. And that's the way I look at it. And that's all I'm interested in. The guys need to be the best. But if we don't create enough opportunities for young, especially youngsters, to grow through the game, assist them to understand the game, to make them better, give them absolutely all the skill possible for them to excel in rugby, then of course we're always going to have this discussion. And we don't want to keep on having the same discussion. You don't want in 10 years' time, when I'm gone, sitting here having another chat to another guy about the same things we spoke about today. Because that's wasting people's time. And that's what I don't really stand for. I say, no, you have to. You have to do this. And we have to assist to make young players absolutely grasp the opportunities to show South Africa, listen, we're better than you think.
Thank you so much. Here's our token of appreciation. It doesn't go as far as the work you have done iconically within the sport, but thank you so much for coming. Please, Dipu, help me reach. We thank you for availing yourself. We hope that we all invest in radical conversations across the board. We gotta keep talking to each other, but we also trying to give platform to icons like yourself to continue speaking not only to the present but to the future. And thanks for availing yourself. And I'm sure the Power Talk listeners have benefited too much from that conversation.
No, thanks for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. That is all from me today and the Power Talk team from Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Tomorrow we are going to speak about the DRC. What's happening to our soldiers there? Are they trapped? Did they get defeated in their confrontation with M23? When are they coming back? Should they be coming back? What are they doing there in the first place? Who are the Banamulenga? Who is M23? Terrorists or freedom fighters? Let's meet tomorrow. Stay tuned for the headlines. In fact, for the news at 1200 hours with Nyakalo Tifu. From us here, till we meet again, Dintanda Nonke Makai.
Power News.
Thanks, Mbuyiseni. The top stories at this hour. Several streets have been cordoned off in the Pretoria CBD to make way for Mkhonto we Sizwe Party's march.